Compound interest gets called a miracle so often that the word stops meaning anything. You've seen the posters, the hockey stick chart, the quiet promise that patience alone will change everything. Some of that story is real math. Some of it is marketing wearing a lab coat. So let's drop the hype and draw the machine. What compounds, what doesn't, and why time shows up in the equation twice. This is educational content, not financial, investment, tax, or legal advice. We're explaining how the math works, not telling you what to do with your money. Nothing here is a recommendation to invest, borrow, or wait. Let's start with what people think they see. Money goes in, time passes, a bigger number comes out. That surface story hides three separate inputs, and a choice about whether interest is allowed to earn interest. Engine 1. The three inputs. Principal is the starting amount. What you put in, or what you already have. Rate is how fast that pile is assumed to grow in each period, usually written as a % per year. Time is how many of those periods you let the process run. Change any one input and the ending pile changes. Double the principal and, in a clean illustration, you double the ending amount. Raise the rate and growth steepens. Extend the time and you add more rounds of growth on top of growth. That sounds obvious. It matters because most arguments about wealth quietly swap one input for another. More time versus a higher rate versus a larger starting balance, without saying so. When two charts disagree, check which lever moved. Engine 2. Simple versus compound. Simple interest pays only on the original principal. If you earn 5% simple on $1,000 for 1 year, you earn $50. Do it for 10 years under a pure simple rule, and you earn $50 10 times, $500 total, while the principal stays $1,000. The interest never joins the base. Compound interest is different. Each period's growth is added to the base before the next period runs. Year 1, 1,000 becomes 1,050. Year 2, 5% applies to 1,050, not just the original 1,000. The snowball picks up snow. Same rate, same time, different mountain. A simplified illustration, not a market forecast. Start with $1,000. Assume a constant 7% annual rate for 30 years, compounded once a year, with no extra deposits, no taxes, and no fees. Under compound interest, the balance grows to roughly $7,600, about 7.5 times the start, order of magnitude depending on rounding. Under a pure, simple path at 7% of the original 1,000 each year, you would add $70 a year for 30 years, $2,100 of interest, for a total near $3,100. The gap between those endings is interest earned on interest. You will also hear the rule of 72. Divide 72 by the annual percent rate to approximate doubling time. At 6%, about 12 years. At 8%, about 9. At 9%, about 8. It is a teaching shortcut for mental math, not a contract from any bank or a forecast of markets. Frequency matters at the margin too. Compounding monthly versus yearly changes results slightly when the stated annual rate is held in particular ways. For education, yearly compounding is enough to see the engine. Real loan and savings products disclose their own conventions. Engine 3. Time asymmetry. Because each period feeds the next, early periods do more total work across a long horizon than late periods of the same length. That is why simplified start-early illustrations look dramatic, and why they are easy to abuse in advertisements. Here is a clean classroom comparison. Illustration only. Constant 7%. No taxes, no fees, no job loss, no market crashes, no withdrawals. Person A contributes about $3,000 a year from age 25 to 35, 10 contribution years, then stops adding new money but leaves the balance invested until 65. Person B waits until 35, then contributes about $3,000 a year every year until 65, 30 contribution years. In many textbook setups, Person A still finishes competitive or ahead despite contributing fewer dollars of new cash because early balances received more compounding rounds. Change the rate, the amounts, or the ages, and the ranking can flip. The mechanism does not flip. Time multiplies the base that later growth acts on. If you only count who deposited more cash, you miss the engine. If you only count years invested, you miss contribution size. The map needs all three inputs. A second illustration, contribution timing within a year. In simplified models, depositing at the beginning of each period compounds slightly more than depositing at the end. Real life is messier. The directional lesson is enough. When money enters the base matters because the base is what compounds. The twist most hype videos skip. Compounding is neutral. The same shape works for you when returns compound on wealth you keep. It works against you when interest compounds on debt you revolve. Credit cards that charge interest on unpaid balances use the same family of math with a different sign. Some student loans capitalize unpaid interest, adding it to principal, which is compounding in a form borrowers feel as a larger balance. Fees compound against you too, not by adding interest, but by shrinking the base that would have grown, the cousin of our retirement fee drag video. A 1% annual skim does not look like a loan statement. It still changes the mountain. So when someone says compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world, ask 3 questions. Compounding of what? For whom? And who pays the other side of the trade? None of this makes a product good or bad. It is infrastructure for growth and for cost. The point is to see the levers: principal, rate, time, simple versus compound, and the sign of the engine. So the next hockey stick chart looks like a machine, not a miracle. If this was useful, the next videos keep mapping systems most people use but few can draw. Subscribe if you want the map, not the hype. This was educational content only, not financial, investment, tax, or legal advice. Nothing here is a recommendation to invest, save, or borrow in any particular way. Your decisions are your own.